all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fossone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We want to give you a little advance notice. We're going to have a Veterans Radio event on Sunday, September 28th, 2025. Radio on the River. We're doing a new location on Freedom River in Livingston County, Michigan. We want you to save the date. We're going to have veteran storytelling and guest speakers. We'll have raffle items, great local musicians and food. Also, uniquely, there's going to be an opportunity to fly in a UH-1 Huey from the Michigan Flight Museum. And maybe you can also win a free ride that way. But plan on supporting Veterans Radio either by buying tickets or sponsoring Radio on the River. Contact us at Dale@veteransradio.org or Jim@veteransradio.org to get more information, but we'd love to have you come out, and we'd certainly love to have you sponsor. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us, whether it's on your mobile phone or your computer or your laptop, your tablet. But listen in to Veterans Radio Podcasts. We post something new every week, and you're going to find it informative.
Imagine American soldiers fighting not on the Western Front against the Germans in World War I, but deep in the frozen landscapes of Russia.
Right.
And here's the really surprising part. Their mission, well, it dramatically changed after they even arrived.
Yeah, that's the crux of it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a pretty little-known chapter of American military history, the American Expeditionary Force, North Russia.
More famously known as the Polar Bear Expedition.
Exactly, the Polar Bears.
Yeah.
We've pulled together insights from, detailed historical accounts to really map out the incredible journey of these 5,000 U.S. Army troops.
That's quite a story.
Our mission today is clear. We want to understand the unexpected reasons these soldiers were sent, what unbelievable challenges they faced up there in the harsh Russian north, and, well, the lasting impact of their truly forgotten fight.
Forgotten is the right word for it.
Get ready for some powerful insights, because this story is far stranger and more compelling than fiction. So let's start at the beginning. Who exactly were these polar bears?
Well, you're talking about a contingent of about 5,000 U.S. Army troops. They became known as the American Expeditionary Force in North Russia.
Okay, 5,000 troops.
Yeah, and they weren't just any soldiers. They pretty quickly earned some unique nicknames. Detroit's Own was one.
Ah, because many were from Michigan.
Exactly. And of course, polar bears. Their motto really encapsulates their spirit. We finish with the bayonet.
Wow. We finished with the bayonet. That immediately tells you something about the kind of grit they needed.
For sure. They were active for just over a year, from August 2, 1918 to August 5, 1919.
Just over a year. But what's really striking here is why they were sent to Russia in the first place. Expert, what were the official intentions behind sending them?
That's the core question, really, because the initial intentions were so different from the reality they actually encountered on the ground. President Woodrow Wilson sent them, but it was at the specific request of Great Britain and France.
Okay, so the Allies asked for them.
Yes. And the stated objectives for this Allied intervention were basically twofold. First, to prevent Allied war materials stockpiled in Arkhangelsk supplies originally meant for the Eastern Front, which had collapsed from falling into either German or, importantly, Bolshevik hands.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, when we say Bolsheviks, we're talking about the communist revolutionary forces gaining power in Russia then.
Exactly. The forces that would eventually form the Soviet Union. And the second objective was to mount an offensive to rescue the Czechoslovak Legion.
The Czech Legion. Who were they?
They were a group of former Austro-Hungarian POWs and defectors trying to fight their way out of Russia. They were sort of stranded along the Trans-Siberian Railroad.
Okay, so two clear goals.
Mm-hmm.
Guard supplies, rescue the Czechs. But I know there was a significant caveat from President Wilson. What was his strict condition for American involvement?
Yeah, this is absolutely critical. President Wilson agreed to American participation only with the clear understanding, the explicit stipulation, that U.S. troops would solely be used for guarding those stockpiled war materials.
Only guarding, nothing else.
He was apparently very firm about that. These specific units, like the 339th Infantry Regiment and the 1st Battalion of the 310th Engineers, they were actually pulled from the pipeline heading to the Western Front in France.
So they were diverted?
Diverted, yes.
Yeah.
They got trained and re-outfitted in England, even given Russian guns, which is interesting. Then they arrived in Arkhangelsk on September 4th, 1918, and were placed under British command.
Okay, so they're diverted from France, get Russian guns, train for this specific guarding mission, and land in Arkhangelsk September 4th. But you mentioned the British commanders got there a month earlier.
Right, August 2nd.
What did the British find that just changed everything?
This is the real twist, maybe the first big aha moment here. When the British commanders leading the Allied intervention arrived in Arkhangelsk on August 2nd, they made a shocking discovery.
Which was?
The Allied war material, the stuff they were supposed to guard, it had already been moved up the Dvina River by the retreating Bolshevik forces.
Wait, moved before the Americans even got the order?
Before the British commanders really got settled, and definitely before the Americans arrived. The very reason Wilson agreed to send them was effectively gone, vanished.
So the supplies they were strictly told to guard were gone before the American troops even set foot in Russia. That must have been a seismic shock.
Absolutely. Imagine getting there for a specific job, and the job doesn't exist anymore.
So what did that immediate contradiction mean for the troops arriving on September 4th, thinking they were there to guard supplies?
It meant an immediate, 180-degree turn in their mission, despite President Wilson's very clear orders.
Yeah.
With nothing left to guard, when the American troops arrived a month after the British, they were immediately thrown into offensive operations against the Bolsheviks. They were tasked with aiding in that other objective, the rescue of the Czech Legion. The 1st Battalion of the 339th Infantry was sent up the Dvina River, and the 3rd Battalion went up the Vologda Railroad line. They were actively pushing back Bolshevik forces for about 6 weeks.
Hold on. So, diverted from France, given Russian guns, told guard supplies only, they arrive, the supplies are gone, and they're immediately sent into combat against the Bolsheviks.
That's exactly it. A total departure from guarding supplies.
What were the conditions like on the ground once they were actually fighting?
Oh, brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Great.
These two fronts they were fighting on became incredibly stretched out, hundreds of miles long in total.
Hundreds of miles?
Yeah, in very narrow corridors through, forests and along rivers. It made them extremely difficult, almost impossible to supply properly, to maintain, and definitely to protect.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It was. And by the end of October 1918, they just couldn't sustain the offensive anymore. They hit a wall. The Allies had to switch to a defensive posture, completely abandoning that goal of linking up with the Czech Legion.
And then winter hit.
And then the Russian winter hit hard. On top of that, the Bolshevik army launched their own offensive, especially along the Volga River sector. This inflicted pretty significant casualties and forced repeated Allied retreats, all in these incredibly harsh, freezing conditions.
The human cost of this completely transformed, almost impossible mission must have been immense. What were the casualty numbers looking like?
They were stark, really stark. More than 210 American forces suffered casualties overall. That included at least 110 deaths directly from battle, about 30 listed as missing in action.
Missing in action in that environment.
Yeah, grim prospects. And then a significant number, 70 deaths from disease. And get this, 90% of those disease deaths were due to the Spanish flu.
The pandemic reached them even up there.
Well, it did. There was a later, more comprehensive report from October 1919 that gave even higher figures, a total of 553 casualties.
553.
Yeah, broken down, 109 killed in battle, 35 died of wounds later, 81 from disease, 19 from accidents or other causes, 305 wounded, and 4 who were prisoners of war but eventually released.
Those numbers are really sobering, especially for a force of 5,000 in that time frame. Beyond the physical toll, though, what did this shifting mission and then the end of the wider war do to the morale of the soldiers still stuck fighting in Russia?
That's such an important question. After the armistice with Germany was signed on November 11, 1918...
The main war is over.
Exactly. The war they thought they were part of was over. Morale among these American soldiers in North Russia just absolutely plummeted. You can imagine. They legitimately questioned why they were still fighting Bolsheviks in the middle of Russia.
Yeah, why are we here?
Precisely. Especially after the armistice was signed, and on top of that, the port of Arkhangelsk froze over for the winter, essentially trapping them there.
Trapped in fighting a war that wasn't theirs anymore, technically.
Right. And they received no clear answers from command about why they had to stay. Just basically told they had to keep fighting to survive. Imagine that feeling, being stuck in a conflict that, for everyone else, had ended months ago.
And this frustration, it wasn't just contained among the troops, right? Didn't pressure start building back home in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. It became a real issue stateside. Family members, friends, they started writing these really passionate letters to newspapers. They circulated petitions to their congressmen demanding the force be brought home immediately.
So public outcry was growing.
Definitely. Newspapers started running editorials calling for their withdrawal. Congressmen were raising the issue in Washington. The pressure really mounted, and it led to instances of rumored and even some actual mutinies among the troops in early 1919.
Mutinies?
Really? There's one specific, pretty poignant case involving 4 American soldiers from Company B of the 339th Infantry. They actually drew up a petition asking when they were going home.
Just asking?
Just asking, basically. And they were threatened with court-martial proceedings for doing it.
Yeah. Wow. Threatened with court-martial for asking to go home after the war ended. That really highlights the desperation and confusion they must have felt.
It does. It shows how tense things got.
So, with all that pressure, both on the ground and back home, what was the path home finally like for these polar bears?
Well, the long road home was finally authorized. President Wilson directed the War Department to start planning the withdrawal of the AEF in North Russia on February 16, 1919.
Okay, so Wilson gives the order in February 19.
Yes. Then U.S. Army Brigadier General Wilds P. Richardson arrived in Arkhangelsk on April 17th. He had orders to organize a coordinated withdrawal basically as quickly as possible given the conditions.
Did they need help getting out?
They did. The British sent the North Russian Relief Force, about 8,000 British volunteers, who started arriving on May 26, 1919. Their specific job was to relieve the American troops so they could pull out.
So relief finally arrived in late May. When did the polar bears actually make it back to U.S. soil?
The bulk of the AEF were finally able to sail. First they went to Brest in France, and then onward to New York City. For about 2/3 of them, though, their actual home was Michigan, which is why they were called Detroit's Own.
Right.
The first large group of troops, 46 officers and nearly 1,500 men, arrived back in Hoboken, New Jersey, aboard the ship Von Steuben on July 15, 1919.
July 1919, so almost a year after they arrived.
Exactly. And it was actually during this withdrawal period on the way home that the men themselves officially decided to adopt the name Polar Bears.
Ah, so they claimed the name themselves.
They did, and they were authorized to wear that distinctive polar bear insignia on their left sleeve. The force was then officially disbanded on August 5th, 1919.
That's a powerful moment, isn't it? Taking ownership of that unique, incredibly tough identity. But looking at the bigger picture, how was this whole expedition ultimately viewed back home once the dust settled?
Well, connecting this to the broader political landscape, the whole idea, the very notion of this expedition was later called into serious question right at the highest levels. Several years after the troops returned, President Warren G. Harding actually referred to the expedition publicly as a mistake.
Harding called it a mistake.
He did, yeah. And he directly placed the blame for it on the previous administration, on Woodrow Wilson's administration.
Interesting. And the aftermath of this forgotten fight, it also involved a really long, tough quest to honor the fallen, particularly those soldiers left behind in Russia. Can you tell us about that effort?
It's an incredible story of dedication, really. Starting around 1920, the Polar Bear veterans themselves began this tireless campaign. They lobbied their state governments, the federal government, anyone who would listen, basically, to retrieve the bodies of their comrades they believed were still buried in Russia.
How many were thought to be left behind?
Initially, the estimate was around 125. That number got refined over time. They thought maybe 226 had been buried there originally. And by the time they started this effort, maybe about 130 sets of U.S. soldier remains were still believed to be in North Russia.
That must have been incredibly difficult, especially given the political situation between the U.S. and the new Soviet Union.
Oh, hugely difficult, primarily because the U.S. didn't even have diplomatic recognition with the Soviet Union at the time. It made any official effort extremely complicated.
So how did they manage?
Despite the challenges, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW, actually sponsored a recovery mission in the autumn of 1929. And remarkably, it was successful.
They actually got remains back.
They did. They managed to find and bring out the remains of 86 U.S. soldiers. Then, a few years later, in 1934, the Soviet Union shipped an additional 14 sets of remains.
Wow.
Yeah, so that significantly reduced the number still thought to be in Russia down to maybe about 30. It's just a true testament to the dedication of those veterans and their families, never giving up.
That is a powerful legacy of remembrance. And didn't it culminate in a specific memorial back in Michigan?
It did, yes. In a really deeply moving ceremony on Memorial Day, May 30th, 1930, the remains of 56 of those returned AEF soldiers were reburied together. They're interred around the Polar Bear Memorial at Whitechapel Memorial Cemetery in Troy, Michigan.
A central place of remembrance.
Exactly. A powerful, tangible symbol for a conflict that, for the most part, was largely forgotten by the wider American public. And just as a final note on that human connection, the very last known living American veteran who fought in that intervention near Arkhangelsk, a man named Harold Guns.
Yeah.
He was born way back in 1899. He lived to be 103 years old, passing away just in March 2003.
103. Wow. The last witness to that whole experience.
Pretty incredible, isn't it?
So when we wrap this up, what does this deep dive into the Polar Bear expedition really mean for us today, looking back? What's the takeaway?
I think it really shows us that even within these monumental global conflicts like World War I that we study so much, there are often these lesser-known, incredibly complex, sometimes confusing chapters.
Hidden stories within the big story.
Exactly. And it's such a powerful reminder that soldiers on the ground, the individuals, can face these dramatically shifting objectives, unimaginable conditions, and a really uncertain return home. All while huge global events are unfolding around them, it really highlights the human element in military history, which sometimes gets lost in the strategy talk.
It really does. This story makes you truly wonder, doesn't it? Beyond the grand strategies and the official pronouncements from presidents and generals, how many other deep dives into history might reveal similar missions? Missions where the soldiers on the ground, maybe they truly didn't understand why they were fighting anymore, only that they had to survive? What other forgotten chapters of courage and maybe confusion are just waiting to be uncovered?
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Faussone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. And PuroClean, a leader in property emergency services. It's the paramedics of property damage, providing water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold and biohazard cleanups. You can reach them at puroclean.com or 800-775-7876. We also want to thank our local sponsors. This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.